It was not me, promise.
Good afternoon, everybody. It's so nice to be together. Okay, there we go. Without the echo. Hi, everybody. Beth Bye here. It's so nice to be together with you. And I had asked the early childhood team to have a meeting with school readiness and CDC programs because it felt like a long time since we'd have an update.
Commissioner, you're muted.
I think what happens is we keep muting all. When did I get muted?
Just a few seconds ago.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I won't repeat everything, but happy to be together and happy to be with you. I thought it was important to have an update with our state-funded early childhood programs. You are at the backbone of our state-funded strategy to support children and families. And you've just been doing amazing work throughout the pandemic and today. And we know that you face significant challenges and you've met those challenges, and we're really grateful. It doesn't happen often, but I was with the governor right before I was here. All the commissioners were together for the first time. It sort of felt like we were getting back to normal, but the governor just expressed his gratitude for the different sectors that were heavily involved in the response, and he particularly mentioned childcare. He also arranged a call with President Biden's economic advisor to talk about what was working and what we still needed in states. And I was able to say childcare infrastructure is important, that childcare is infrastructure, and that we need long-term promises around funding for childcare. The dollars have been appreciated, but in order to get the wages up in the workforce, we need long-term increased investments in childcare, and that it should both be part of the infrastructure program and also part of the budget, which was neat to be able to talk about that. The governor stressed it to him that infrastructure is more than roads and trains, that there's human infrastructure, and those investments will be critical to get families back to work. So I wanted to just start by letting you know that we're trying to advocate on the national level, also trying to maximize state appropriations and American Rescue Plan dollars and Care for Kids dollars to support our school readiness and CDC programs, because we know you get some funding from us, but you also get funding from Care for Kids and parent fees, and we're trying to support families and programs. So Rachel's going to be working the PowerPoint for me. So welcome. We have some very specific information to go over today, as well as some of those broad-based comments that I just made. So I love that our new updated mission really stresses families first. We know how hard you work to partner with families, how much you supported families this year. And we've also added very specific language that as an agency, we will assertively remove barriers and build upon the strength of historically disenfranchised people and communities to ensure fair access to early childhood resources. And so we're really trying to be focused both with our stabilization funds and also the programs that you administer to make sure that we're addressing those equity goals. Next slide, please. So today I'm going to give some updates about legislation that passed. Also talk about, today you'll hear about the priority district enrollment stipend, a way that the office is trying to get some additional supports to priority districts that experience some of the biggest drops in enrollment. Also some program updates and reminders, the Care for Kids family fee payment reporting requirements, what's happening with ECE Reporter. I want to give a big thank you to you all. That ECE Reporter, as it's implemented, it's incredible how we're getting data where we can make sense statewide of what's happening. So the work there, when I started as commissioner, I really, it was very hard to get any reports to know what was happening, where were the children, how many were we serving, where were we serving, what kind. Now, because of ECE Reporter, we can see all the funding streams together. We can get a much better picture of what's happening statewide and make the case for resources in a stronger way. Also want to talk about, we know many of you have been having different operating schedules because of some of the challenges that COVID has brought on for staffing and cohorting, and just some of the general stresses that you're facing. So I want to talk about a process where you can apply for a waiver of your operating schedule. And then we're really excited to be able to begin more monitoring visits, and we also know you do monitoring visits to support programs and program quality. So that's what we're going to try to get through today. Okay, next. Well, we were really excited to pass some bills at the legislature, and these really have to do with our long-term vision for early childhood. So the changes modify the School Readiness Council membership, allow School Readiness Councils to allocate some funds to family child care providers if that's in their plan, allow OEC to administer school readiness funds through contracts, and add explicit goals around the importance of promoting diversity. The idea is to elevate family and community voice, to build a more equitable system, to increase access, and for provider stability. And I would say also, I think for OEC, aligning our programs, making it simpler. I know there are a lot of people on these calls that are both reporting CDC and school readiness, sometimes within the same classroom. You know, how can we make these programs work better together? That is part of what these changes that passed the legislature had to do. And I'm going to go over some specifics about House Bill 6558 and 6559, just so you all are aware. The first is the Office of Early Childhood Bill, which is 6559. So I just talked about the section 1 of that bill is going to promote socioeconomic and racial and ethnic diversity in classrooms. Section 2 of that bill allows OEC to allocate school readiness and child daycare funds for licensed family child care homes to take advantage of that. Also, we're allowed to administer school readiness funds through contracts. I already mentioned that. That's also in section 2 of that bill. Section 3 amends the School Readiness Council membership to have more parents, to add a workforce member, to increase the percentage of parents and guardians who make up that membership, allows councils to compensate parents or guardians for council meeting, establish meetings at times where it's easy for all council members to make it, and as well as charge the council with collaborating with the OEC related to planning improvements to the whole state early childhood governance structure. So those are some changes. It also changes leadership is elected by the board now. You know, the superintendent and the mayor still are on the council, but the council may choose to elect someone else as leaders. That's another change. I already talked about the licensed family homes to receive funds. Also make some changes that are going to allow us to build a quality improvement system, sort of thinking of licensing and accreditation as steps in a process toward quality, where licensing is the base standard, accreditation is the top, and we're working to build a middle step. There were some legislative changes to allow those groups to work together, though we'll still have to be really careful about quality improvement staff are not licensors and being clear about that. So also, let's see. Oh, the other piece is staff can't start until they have a FBI criminal background check that has cleared. And also on background checks, family child care home household members used to be 16 and older had to get background checks. That has been changed to 18 and older. And then there were some changes to the summer camp background checks that I'm not going to go into detail. The other thing in this bill, which is not really related to school readiness settings, but I know many of you know there are a lot of challenges with the early childhood workforce. We added endorsements to birth to 3 to allow more education endorsements to be acceptable for birth to 3 staffing. And then those are the main points. I won't go through the others. The other bill 6558 wasn't the Office of Early Childhood bill, but had the other early childhood pieces. One was we had just updated the family child care regs. There were a lot of concerns about impacting training and medical visits for family child care providers. So it updated it to be clear that they could use a sub for those purposes. Also, what passed was a child care business incubator bill, which, as many of you know, has been up for a while. It allows a private family home to be used for child care purposes where someone isn't living but is a home. This is to help increase the amount of infant toddler care. There's also an early childhood workforce task force. I know there were a lot of concerns about this part of the bill that Senator McCrory was working on, but this is really to help us. This was, from them. This wasn't our bill. This is to help us make sure that we're looking at the workforce challenges and working with higher ed to have a unified approach to increasing the availability of early childhood educators. And then another piece that will really have a big impact on you is that Care for Kids will now be available to families that are in workforce training. And I can't stress enough, the changes in Care for Kids are really significant. And I know you've been hearing about them, but I know a source of frustration for me, and there are many reasons for it, but not a really high percentage of kids enrolled in school readiness and CDCs are also on Care for Kids. And now it should really be worth it for you all to take Care for Kids because most of you are accredited. If you're accredited, there will in perpetuity be a 20% bonus that goes directly to programs that are accredited for children on Care for Kids. It brings it up from like 50 to 85 to 90% of market rate. It's also an incentive for programs to get accredited. Many are not. But, Care for Kids was always meant to be a leg of the stool and to help your programs and to help programs achieve more income to be able to balance their budgets because we all know how difficult your budgets are. So hopefully this increase in funding and also making it available to more families, both families now can make up to 60% of the state median income. That's not in effect yet. It will be in effect as soon as we get through the process, but very soon more families will be eligible and the reimbursement rate for accredited programs is significantly different. And so I'm really hoping that you'll work with your families and get as many as possible on Care for Kids, because for that family, when they leave you, then they still have Care for Kids for school age care. It helps that family for a long time. So those were the special sort of the bills specific to early childhood ed. A couple of other things. Senate Bill 2, we're really excited about because that gets rid of the parent fee on birth to 3. that's really been a barrier for some families. They just say, oh, I don't need the speech therapy because I don't want to pay $40 a month or whatever it is. It's too much for that family. So it gets rid of that, which is a big deal. And the other thing, which I know I've talked to some of you about, is birth to 3 can now continue through the summer in perpetuity. We did that during the pandemic. But families don't have to shift over to the public schools in May to then shift to a different summer program in June, then shift to kindergarten in the fall or public preschool in the fall. I'm sorry, not kindergarten, to public preschool in the fall. So those are two things that are really going to help families access those early intervention services. And for those of you that serve infants and toddlers, it's important that you know and you let your programs know about that change. There's also a cost of living increase for private providers, and I know CDCs are always part of that, any private provider increase. So I'm sorry that was a little bit long, but I put the bill numbers on here so you all can look them up and read them. I don't think I did the best job summarizing. I did my best, and I'm thanks to Maggie Adair who follows these. And to you all, many of you were advocates for portions of this over the session. I think we really want to build a more sensible, unified early childhood system, and we believe we've made some important steps this year toward that. Okay, next slide. Blah, blah, blah. Okay, we thought it was important, and we started this in January, working on this with OPM and talked to some of you all about it. We just knew that priority district programs were struggling, and this data really shows you the difference between priority and competitive school readiness communities, and we know it applies to CDCs as well, so CDCs and priority districts. Families in those districts have been slower to come back, and those programs have been, I mean, it's amazing what y'all have been doing to stay open, but we know it's been super hard. So there will be a stipend coming that represents the average of 2 children per month for 6 months, because even if we sent you funding equivalent to our office's funding, we also know you missed out on parent fees, and you all said that to us and said you need to help us. And I'm not saying it was perfect for competitive districts. We know that programs there have been struggling too, but there's a big difference. And we really felt like we didn't want to risk losing programs in our priority districts. So this is how it's going to work. Payments will be made directly to the programs in those priority districts. You can see how we made the calculation on this slide. Program managers will email the programs in advance to let them know, and all these payments have to be processed by June 30th. So this is, I think, something we wanted to do to try to be helpful. We know, like everything, none of it is sufficient, but hopefully it helps a bit. Rachel, just tell me when to stop.
Yep, that's your last slide.
That's it. Yep. Slide 9. That was my last one. Phew. All right, good to see you all, and I'll be listening for the rest and be available to help with questions.
Thank you, Commissioner. Hi, everyone. My name is Rachel Tway Grant, and I am the co-program manager of the Child Daycare Contracts Program. And I'm going to today share with you just some quick program updates and reminders. A reminder that per Memo 42 that was recently distributed to programs and is posted on our website, the funding model for this upcoming new fiscal year starting July 1, 2021 to 2022 will, the way programs are paid will go back to the pre-COVID funding model, which will be based on per child reimbursement rates for children receiving on-site services. School age care will only be paid with what is in everyone's contract for child daycare contracts. The 25% operational expense supplement will no longer be implemented. Programs will no longer be receiving reimbursement for remote or hybrid learning. However, we do recognize that it is very much possible for programs to still have to close a classroom or worst case, close down a program due to a positive COVID case. So in the event that that does happen, we strongly encourage you to continue to engage with families whenever possible. Since we will be going back to this pre-COVID funding model, you all will need new reporting templates. So those will be sent out to programs in July.
Hi, this is Annette Carbone. I'm the Grants and Contract Specialist, working with a number of programs, primarily child daycare program. For with Care for Kids paying the family fees from April through September, that we've been getting a lot of questions about how do we report those. And so we've sort of scratched our head a little bit, come together and come up with this plan. The Care for Kids family fees are paid directly to the programs for children in those state-funded slots. So that information is going to be reported to OEC. But to have it at our fingertips, we've at some point, especially for audit purposes, we wanted to just sort of outline your responsibilities and just kind of how just give you a heads up about how we're going to track that. So you would still continue to track the Care for Kids family fee payments that are collected for the children enrolled in a state-funded program, including obviously school readiness and a child daycare program. What we're expecting is that we are coming up with a different document, and it's not something that you have to submit monthly. It'll be a form that as you track the payments that you receive for Care for Kids, you would note it on this form, and it would be for the remainder of this fiscal year, which will cover the payments for April, May, and June, and then for payments from July, August, and September will be noted on that form. And you would submit this form one time when you send your November reports. So that form, that template will be coming out to you in July. And so now that also sort of brings to mind, you know that when you receive those payments, April's payments are going to be received in May, May's payments in June, etc. So in some cases, people have already submitted their May report with that information. Some people didn't include it, and so there was some confusion. If you indicated you included those funds on either the subsidies or the family fees, don't worry about that. It's just that we don't want you to go back and have to redo all these reports. That would be quite a bit. So what we would anticipate is just from the payments that you receive in June for May and from this point forward, this is the form that you would use, which we'll send out to you. So don't worry about whatever's done in May. That's behind us. It stays in Vegas or in OEC. And then moving forward, we will have you report those separately. So not to include them in the monthly reports.
Good afternoon. I'm Christy Godemski, and I am the program manager for School Readiness. And my responsibility is to talk about ECE Reporter. All programs who are state funded do need to comply with the agency's data collection processes, and programs are required to enter child data in the state funded space on a monthly basis and make sure that that data is validated. The reason that we're asking programs to do this is so that we have complete state-funded child enrollment data that helps the OEC understand how programs are doing, how we can best advocate for you, and how to better serve children and families in Connecticut. And in ECE Reporter, there are 476 accounts as of this week that are registered, and as of that number, 215 providers are represented. And then breaking it down further, 176 providers have marked their data complete for this time. And then 301 sites have marked their data complete. So we appreciate everyone who's been working so hard to get their data entered into ECE Reporter.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Cheryl Sparks, and I am the co-program manager for School Readiness. Today, I'm going to talk to you about the waiver for operating schedule variances. So we recognize, as Commissioner Bye mentioned earlier, the challenges that programs faced during the pandemic in regards to staffing and trying to maintain cohorts for children. And we know that those challenges have not been eliminated, even though the pandemic, we are in recovery period. And they will not magically disappear when those executive orders are lifted on July 20th. So we are working towards trying to come up with a resolution to allow for both school readiness and child daycare programs to continue to operate on adjusted operating schedules in order to be able to deal with those challenges. Currently, there is the authority for school readiness programs to request a waiver, and that is in legislation. Child daycare programs, however, there's contract language that requires a review in order for us to allow for those changes in operating schedules to continue when the executive orders are lifted. We're working towards a resolution for that, and we're hoping to be able to get back to you soon with the process for requesting those waivers. How the process will look right now, just a general overview, I can provide you, and we will provide specific guidance for school readiness programs and child daycare at a later date. But right now, what we're thinking is that the programs will request a waiver. They will complete the waiver application. The one thing that is going to be different in this waiver application that was different from the pandemic is they're going to need to provide evidence of need for the change in operating schedule. For school readiness, councils will need to approve the required requests for all programs. And then waivers will be submitted to the OEC program managers for review and approval. And then programs and liaisons will be notified of those request approvals. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Jennifer Jones. I am the co-program manager for Child Daycare Contracts, as well as the program manager for State Head Start and Early Head Start Childcare Partnerships. As many of you know, for the past 4 or 5 years now, OEC program managers and fiscal specialists have been conducting monitoring visits at programs. Programs are monitored, both school readiness and CDC, to ensure that services are delivered in compliance with state-funded requirements, whether that be legislation or contracts, and that state funds are being used appropriately and according to their intended purpose. Programs are also monitored to identify opportunities for program leadership and improvement in partnership with the OEC. How are programs selected to be monitored? So there's 3 different ways that OEC program staff select programs to be monitored. One way is a ding, if you will, from the Office of Internal Audits. So if that office conducts an audit of your program and there seems to be any findings, part of a corrective action plan will be monitoring by OEC staff. If there are known issues of noncompliance in programs, you are selected for monitoring, as well as programs that are just randomly generated by a computer and selected to be monitored. We obviously have been in a holding pattern with monitoring. Not only does it involve classroom observations, it involves spending significant time in programs, and we haven't been able to do that due to the pandemic. But as things begin to change, we are developing plans for fiscal year 22, and we're really excited to get back out to programs, see folks, and really focus in on the hard work everyone's been doing during this really difficult time. We are going to turn it over now to Deb Fliss and Commissioner Bye with questions.
Hello again, and thanks for those presentations. We've touched on a lot of different topics, and I've tried to organize the questions a little bit in a similar sequence to the topics as they were introduced. So we'll go first to questions about updates and contracting. So to begin, does the administration of school readiness through contracts mean that private providers will contract directly with OEC and not the municipality? Commissioner, do you want to comment on that?
I'm happy to take that.
Thanks.
This legislation allows OEC to contract with school readiness providers. We don't have anything planned at this moment. We just wanted to be able to have the same tools available both for CDC and school readiness. And those of you who've already been in meetings about system reform know this is a sort of a iterative process where we've been looking at how to make 8 different funding streams much less complex. So this is something we did the legislation to make this allowable. We don't plan to shift it this year, and we plan to have conversations with school readiness liaisons, et cetera, to help. It could mean that we funded programs directly, but that's not the intent. And I know I heard some rumors like, oh, we want to get rid of the school readiness liaisons. Absolutely not. We need school readiness liaisons. We've tried to use ARPA funds to send some additional funds to school readiness liaisons, and we actually know that we need to look at that funding in a way that we can partner even more with liaisons, and in fact have been advocating on the national level that our model of community-based decision-making is something that makes sense. Some communities have all public preschool, mostly all public preschool funded by school readiness. Others have none. Most have a blend, but that's based on local decision-making. I think the most important thing to us that we want to implement sooner rather than later is to have more parent voice and more equity on school readiness councils, and to think through the balance of power, and because we don't believe that parents have had enough of a voice, and we know it's really hard to engage parents, which is why we put language in there around compensating parents that participate. When you sit around that table, everyone else around that table is getting paid for sitting there, but not parents. So we need your guidance and support through this, but we think the early childhood system will be improved, more responsive to community and more responsive to family needs if that changes. The contract language, again, is not something that's changing tomorrow. This gives us the authority to do it by contracts, but that will only happen after many conversations and thinking through what is the best way for programs to get paid. And that said, the current system's not perfect, because I know some programs wait 2 months to get paid. That's not okay. And we have chosen during the emergency to sometimes pay programs directly, and they've appreciated that. But there's a lot of conversations to be had before any of that changes. And I want to state here on this call that our liaisons are critical to both access and quality. And so I just want to state, I can't state that strongly enough. And I think we need to think about our partnership in a way that looks at the compensation and some of the inequities based on district size too. So we're looking at that and looking to improve that. And we do believe there's more federal funds coming for childcare. And we want to think about how do we blend those funds with state funds if they come, and really lean on the model of community-based decision-making, but also community-based monitoring with collaboration with OEC monitoring.
Very good. That covered a number of questions. Thank you. Rachel, I'm going to ask you to go back to slide 9, if you would, please. So just so that we can clarify the priority district enrollment stipend. And I just want to call attention to the bottom of the slide where it says per memo 35, there will be an update. The priority district enrollment stipend is what was identified in memo 35 as the family fee replacement payment. That language has become complicated and overlapping with other things that we're doing. And so we have clarified that, and there will be an update to memo 5. So there's not a different payment coming to folks. There is the family fee replacement payment, now called Priority District Enrollment Stipend. We needed to clean that up for both internal purposes and because it sounded too similar to other things that we're doing. So thank you. I just wanted to make sure that was clear. Can we go on to, yeah?
Deb, this is Cheryl. I just want, while you're on the slide, I'd just like to clarify one other item, please.
Yeah.
In the section where it identifies the calculation, there's one piece of the calculation that is not stated there. The 145 per child times 2 children per month is per classroom equivalent. Okay, so it's not for the entire program. So for each classroom equivalent, you will receive the equivalent of 145 per child times 2 children times 6 months.
Excellent.
Cheryl, while you're on and Annette's on, I mean, there may be a way that we can, we have done calculations here, and we will get out to the districts as soon as possible what the calculations are per program. Is that accurate, Cheryl?
Well, payments are being processed in the next few days,
coming quickly.
so they will be receiving the payments, correct. Okay. If they do have questions about the calculations, they certainly can reach out to us individually.
Yeah.
Yes, same here for CDC.
And that's why the name change is important to highlight for folks, because it could be that the new language is what will appear on your payment receipt in some form. And so we want to make sure that you recognize it when it comes.
Yeah, and it's also confusing because programs are also receiving their stabilization funds at the same time. So it does get confusing. And then programs will also be receiving their family fee funding. So we're trying to really speed those up, because we know that a lot of times programs wait for state payments, but they rely on those parent copays to help them. So we're really working with our fiscal office to expedite that first payment. So It is confusing there, and that's why we're clarifying the language.
Trying to clean that up. So we do have a Care for Kids question. So while we're on that topic, would you share a little bit more about what the category of workforce development means in the Care for Kids eligibility?
Yes, I will. I have it right here in front of me. So I just got to find the right page. Okay. So Workforce Task Force, Section 4, Section 3. Okay. So I can be very clear, and this is in Section 3 of House Bill 6558. So what we tried to do is be clear about who qualifies. So it can be someone who is attending a public or independent institution of higher education, a private occupational school, a job training or employment program administered by a workforce development board, an apprenticeship program administered by the Labor Department, an alternate route to certification program, an adult education program, a local Even Start program. So the idea is, and parents will have to show proof that they're enrolled in a program, and they also have to say when they're done with the program. But those are the uses, and there's $50 million set aside to cover, up to $50 million to cover that for families. And again, if you're accredited at a much higher rate.
Very clear. Thank you.
Oh, Deb, the other piece of that is, and through December, OEC will be paying the family fee for families on Care for Kids for that as well. So it all adds up.
Very clear. Thank you. So the next topic that we have questions on is ECE Reporter. And the questions basically center on how programs and liaisons will have access to the data by program or for communities.
You know, that is a really good question. And what I'm going to suggest is that we schedule a meeting with the liaisons and our IT department with Skylight while Skylight's still engaged to go over that, because we want this data to be publicly available to you and to us. And I think that kind of meeting can promote that. But that's the whole idea, that this is not our data. And for so long, I know when I was a director, I felt like I was sending these reports into a black hole. And when I arrived as commissioner and asked a lot of questions, I realized that some of it wasn't a black hole. So we've made significant investments we got a federal grant to help us clean this up. And now the report is available. Like, can I just show an example of the kind of slide that will be available? Because I'm working on this right now to share with our own team. Hold on. This is off script. Sorry, Deb.
I'm good.
If we can take down our PowerPoint for a minute.
Yeah, I stopped sharing, Commissioner, so it's all yours.
Okay, I just want to get to that slide. Oh, I'm in the wrong PowerPoint. I'm sorry. Hold on. Give me one sec.
So
I'm really getting there. Something's
all right,
going wrong.
I'll just say while you're getting there that
Something's going wrong with my computer. So
a few
just
more
give me
questions. You can put a few more questions in the chat if you have them. We'll get to as many as we are able to.
All right. Can you see my screen yet?
Not yet. I'll give it a minute.
If I push play, this goes away. So I have to show you it in its. Can you see it now?
Can see it now.
Okay. So I
Great.
asked like 10 minutes ago for a slide that showed funding sources for students. And you can see here, this is priority school readiness, child daycare, competitive school readiness, Smart Start, and State Head Start. So I could never get this report, even a month ago, to be able to show this, nor could you see. Now you'll be able to get a report like this for your school readiness council rather than statewide numbers that will have your town numbers to just show. And this is one of 100 different kinds of views. But this is where we're trying to get as an agency, to be able to look at what's contributing and how many kids are being served by what programs. And I will tell you, as commissioner, I think I have a sense of the programs, but this really helped me. And when I get people complain to me about, Smart Start, oh no, Smart Start, that's going to hurt our private providers. It's such a tiny slice of the pie when you see it in context and you see the state's investment. So I just share that to say, because of the work you're doing, putting the data in, and because of an improved data system, these kind of reports you'll be able to get locally and at the state level. But I do think we need a meeting so you can let our IT department know what kind of data do you need from us for your school readiness councils, and then they can make sure they have sort of the connections so that you can access your own data. But that's the whole point of improving the data system. Was that helpful?
That was helpful.
I get excited about data.
The system's being built and there are opportunities to generate reports that are
being
useful.
built because of your all patience with us, because you've been wrangling with the system for decades and not able to see the outcome. And now what we promise you is you'll be able to use the data you give us, and we'll actually be using the data you give us to advocate for what we need to support children and families.
All right, we have two questions on the supplemental administrative funds for school readiness. The first, so Cheryl, I think these are probably detailed questions for you, if you can comment on. The first is about the possibility of extending the deadline And the second is about the process if a school readiness council doesn't meet until September.
Okay, sure. So the first one regarding the deadline, we just in the last day were able to get approved a second deadline. So councils will have the option of submitting by July 1st or by July 23rd. And we will be processing those requests that come in by each of those dates in 2 separate batches. So if you submit by July 1st, we will review those requests and payments will go out during the month of July. If you submit by July 23rd, we will review those in early August and you should receive your payment during the month of August. And the second question, Deb, sorry.
The second question was about how to handle the process if the School Readiness Council does not meet until September.
I think we're going to have an internal discussion about that. We actually are meeting right after this meeting, Deb and Christy and I, to discuss some more details about the admin funding. So we are actually in the process of developing an FAQ that we'll be distributing in the next day or so that will hopefully answer a lot of the questions that we've been receiving from you. And if your question is not answered, please send it to us, to either Christy or I, and we will do our best to get an answer to you right away.
And can I do one other piece of data while they got me going, Deb? I just want to show you, because I was complaining about this earlier, and I'm complaining, but you all have to deal with the reality. But in terms of school readiness, taking advantage of Care for Kids, these are the number of, now we know that like 60 to 100% of the kids enrolled in school readiness and CDCs are low income. And look how many are Care for Kids funded. And look how many are not Care for Kids funded. So think about all the funds that are foregone by programs because they're not taking advantage of Care for Kids. I'm not saying every parent qualifies, because if the parent's not working, they don't qualify. Up until now, if the parent was in job training, they didn't qualify. I get all that. But like, this is an example of, I could never have known this a month ago. Now I can ask a question and see this, and you'll be able to see it too. And we could break it down by town and see, oh, this town's doing a great job. Maybe they could share at our next meeting about how they're getting more families to sign up for Care for Kids. Because if you're undocumented, you can't get Care for Kids. Like, there are reasons for this. But there are also some success stories in districts. So it's just another example. I'll stop now.
There are reasons and there are opportunities when we look at the data story. The next set of questions are questions about the staffing challenges that programs are experiencing and the implications of that in terms of our having provided a subsidy directly for staff through stabilization funding and whether that will be continued, and whether we are looking at or have any thoughts on the challenges programs are experiencing because they cannot fully enroll because they can't find sufficient numbers of staff. And Commissioner, I don't know if you want to share any thoughts on the staffing crisis and our awareness around that.
We have a lot of awareness around the staffing crisis, and we are having discussions internally about how to manage this when the July, some of the waivers, and we know this is imminent. I don't think we have simple answers, but that's part of why we're talking about waivers for, the number of hours. We know that some of that has been the way people are getting through staffing. And we're working with Department of Labor. We're really trying to think through how we're going to address this. We know we have to address this in the next month to come up with some solutions. We have some long-term solutions, but frankly, this is a very short-term crisis, and it's been getting worse over the past 3 months. It's just one of those challenges. So we will get back to you, and I think we need to get back in pretty short order with answers. I don't have any today, but do know this is pretty much at the top of our list internally to try to figure out how to help our programs as they're facing this challenge.
And there's a very specific question about staff who have not had their FBI background checks returned and when they can start work. Can someone comment on that? I don't have that detail in front of me. I can't pull it off the website while I'm doing the other things that I'm doing here.
Deb, do you want to repeat that one more time?
Yeah, well, sure. There's a question about when staff can start work if their FBI background checks have not been returned. And I can't get to the website.
Well, the legislation is they cannot start until they've passed the FBI background check. I'm just looking to see if there's a effective date.
Right.
On that. I can tell you that.
Okay, and then I'll just ask if there are any last items that people want to put in the chat. There are a few very specific questions.
Yeah, I've got that. I've got that.
Okay.
That's effective October 1st, 2021.
Great. Terrific. Thank you. And so I'll just ask if there are any last items that people want to put in the chat. There are a few very specific questions that are either answered in existing memos or documents or that will be answered in the FAQ document that we'll put out on the supplemental administrative funds. So more information is coming on those topics. Okay, Commissioner, do you want to make any closing remarks before we end our time? We have 3 minutes left.
Well, I guess I'll always end with thank you because I know how hard you all have been working, but I feel like I say that all the time, but know that I mean it. We are in a dynamic moment for childcare and for families and children. We know they're facing incredible challenges. We think we have tremendous opportunity ahead of us in terms of federal investments, and that was reiterated today on the call with the economic advisor for President Biden. And so I think we all have to ready ourselves. Know that in Connecticut, we are leaning into the federal government and asking them to give us flexibility and to allow us for community-based decision-making. So if I was to give you any advice for this summer, it would be to please be thinking about governance and your councils, and if there's some work that needs to be done to shore them up or appointments that need to be made to have a better balance, that could be a good summer project so that in the fall and winter, when some of these changes are coming, you have a strong governance body. If because I know I was a liaison and I've been on school readiness councils, and it's really hard work to make them stronger. And that's part of why we think we need to find additional funds, and we've provided them with ARPA funds while we have them temporarily, because we know it's not so simple. So just spend some time thinking about those councils and ways that maybe in your community they can be stronger and they have a balance of families, that they're not totally populated by the schools or by childcare providers, so that there's a community voice. So that's something we're really trying to push. And also, hopefully you all saw that we are accepting applications through Friday for the parent cabinet. And we have more than 60 applicants, but there are some parts of the state, as I understand it, Litchfield area and Fairfield County really need more parent applicants because they're going to be picked based on, having children in the system and what part of the state they represent, so that we don't feel like we have enough parent voice at the macro level, and just ask that you think about parent voice at the micro level. But mostly thank you, and I think we'll be talking soon. I think the workforce issues, we're going to have some work sessions about ways, you may have ideas, you can share them with us, but I think we're going to need some structured input about what programs need to meet requirements and what needs to happen to requirements to make sure we have a workforce so we can have childcare. and maintain quality. So it's complicated. So I guess those are my closing comments. I hope you all have a great evening, and I look forward to seeing you again soon.
Thanks. As with all of our calls, we'll go through all the questions. We'll process responses to what we can. We'll get those out to you, and we'll make the recording available. Have a good day, everyone.
Bye, everyone.